All right, let's get right into it. Today we're breaking down an incredibly fragile situation that's unfolding across two of the world's most critical geopolitical hotspots. We're talking about high-stakes diplomacy and shaky ceasefires that are right now teetering on the absolute brink of collapse.
And that's really the million-dollar question, isn't it? Despite some really intense efforts to calm things down, the threat of a major conflict is just looming larger by the day. We're going to dive into exactly why things in the Strait of Hormuz and on the Lebanese border are so unbelievably volatile right now.
So, here's how we're going to walk you through this complex mess. First, we'll tackle the immediate crisis in the Strait of Hormuz. Then, we'll peek behind the curtain at the negotiations going on. After that, we'll shift to the deadly escalation in Lebanon, and finally, we'll round it out with a few other key headlines from around the globe.
Okay, first up, the Strait of Hormuz. You have to understand, this is a critical artery for the entire world's energy supply, and right now, it's become a major flashpoint. This is where the tension is most visible, and frankly, most dangerous.
And just look at how fast this whole thing went sideways. For a second there, it looks like we might be de-escalating when Iran announced a reopening. But then, just 2 days later, President Trump doubles down, saying the U.S. naval blockade stays, and boom, Iran slams the door shut again, and almost immediately after that, the situation gets really, really dangerous.
And that hardline stance? It came right from the top. President Trump made Washington's position crystal clear. He's framing Iran's control over the strait as a form of blackmail, and even brought up past actions, like the killing of Qasem Soleimani, basically as proof that the U.S. is not bluffing.
And this isn't just talk, right? You can see the real-world impact right here. We're not talking about hypotheticals. U.S. Central Command has been actively enforcing this blockade. 23 ships turned away, sometimes under the watchful eyes of Apache helicopters. It is a very real, very tangible pressure campaign.
So pretty much the moment Iran put that strict management policy back in place, the incidents just started piling up. I mean, we're talking gunboats from the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps opening fire, a container ship getting hit by who knows what, even a cruise ship reporting threats. The whole situation forced commercial ships, including massive Indian oil tankers, to just stop in their tracks.
Okay, so with all of that happening out at sea, what's going on behind the scenes? Let's switch gears and look at the diplomatic dance. Because even with tensions this high, there are some serious talks happening in the background.
And here's where they're really stuck. The U.S. wants Iran to hand over its highly enriched uranium and stop all enrichment for 20 years. Iran's response? They're calling the uranium demand a non-starter and are only willing to even consider a 5-year pause. As you can see, that is a massive, massive gap to try and bridge.
And this whole thing isn't just about Iran versus the U.S. It's also pulling back the curtain on a major power struggle inside Iran's own leadership. You've got the pragmatists on one side who wanted to open the strait to cool things down, and on the other, you've got the hardliners and the IRGC who see the strait as their biggest bargaining chip against America.
And this message, which is reportedly from the new supreme leader, wow, it sends a really strong signal that, for now at least, the hardliners are winning that internal fight. It's a defiant statement that makes any kind of diplomatic breakthrough that much harder.
But even with all that tough talk, there are still a lot of people trying to pull this back from the brink. Pakistan is stepping up as a key mediator. And you've got major regional players like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt all pushing hard for a diplomatic solution. So that window for talks, it's still open, for now.
Okay, and if all of that wasn't complicated enough, get this. There's now a huge investigation looking into possible insider trading on the conflict itself. We're talking over $1 billion in bets on a platform called Polymarket that were, let's say, perfectly timed before a potential strike. It's raising some very serious questions about who knew what and when.
All right, let's pivot now to our second flashpoint, southern Lebanon. Because over there, a fragile ceasefire hasn't just been broken, it's been shattered, and the conflict has just taken a tragic, deadly turn.
A UN peacekeeper, French Staff Sergeant Florian Montorio, was killed and 3 others were wounded while they were clearing explosive ordnance. And let's be clear, this was not an accident. This was a targeted attack, and it marks a really serious escalation in the conflict.
So to really get what this means, you need to know who UNIFIL is. They're basically the referees on the ground in southern Lebanon. Their entire mission is to monitor the ceasefire and keep things stable. So an attack on them? It's an attack on the very idea of peace in the region.
And the reaction from the international community? It was fast and it was blunt.
French President Emmanuel Macron did not mince words. He came right out and pointed the finger directly at Hezbollah, demanding that the Lebanese authorities find whoever did this and arrest them immediately.
Hezbollah, though, came back with a strong denial. They're basically saying, whoa, hold on a second. They called the accusations hasty and then pivoted, bringing up what they describe as international silence when Israel has attacked UNIFIL in the past. They're essentially asking, where's the outrage then?
So what you have here is a U.S.-brokered ceasefire that has just completely falling apart. Israel says it carried out airstrikes because militants broke the deal. And in response, a senior Hezbollah official has now declared that the group is abandoning its policy of strategic patience. That's a huge deal, and it signals a potential return to open conflict.
And of course, something this big doesn't just stay in one region. The ripple effects are being felt all over the world, and it's putting a real strain on relationships between countries that are usually allies. For example, you've even got the Pope getting drawn in. After President Trump apparently criticized his calls for peace, Pope Leo XIV publicly said thanks but no thanks to a debate, saying he wants to stay above the political back and forth and just focus on a universal message of peace.
And that tension between allies? We saw it pop up again in this spat between the U.S. and Spain. After Spain's prime minister criticized the U.S. for undermining international law, President Trump hit back on social media by making fun of Spain's economy.
And then, in a move that I don't think anyone saw coming amidst all this geopolitical turmoil, the White House made a huge pivot on a completely different front. President Trump signed an executive order to fast-track research into psychedelic therapies. It's a massive development in mental health care, and it's happening right in the middle of everything else.
So where does all this leave us? Well, we're in this moment of just an incredibly precarious balance. You've got high-stakes negotiations over the Strait of Hormuz that are failing, and you have a fragile ceasefire in Lebanon that's been shattered. The entire region is truly on a knife's edge, and it leaves all of us with one big question. What is the next domino to fall?